This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim to the Shimru International Hilchos Shabbos Learning Program. This week, we're going to be learning the malacha of Hatzovo, dyeing. Now, don't get scared. Please, everyone, stay alive. Okay, dyeing, we're talking about tzvia, coloring something. And that is the 15th malacha. And this was a very important malacha in the Mishkan, as many of the malachos were in preparation for the malacha of dyeing. In fact, the first 11 malachos were all used in preparation of dyeing. Once the dye was produced by cooking the herbs, and they cleaned the wool, and they combed the wool, and the wool was ready to go. And they would use this wool for the curtains in the Mishkan. Now, let's get the Av Malacha, the Tolda, and the Isurei D'Rabbanan. The Av Malacha, the Rambam writes, in Mishnah Torah, Hilchos Shabbos, Parak Tes Halach Yod Gimel, one who colors a thread that is 4 tfachim long, or any material that is large enough to produce a thread which is 4 tfachim long, one would be chayiv on Shabbos. So that is the Av Malacha, to dye, to color a thread that is 4 tfachim long. The Tolda, the Rambam writes, is one who creates a dye. That's a Tolda of tzvia. So the Rambam says, Ha'isa ein hatzeva, one who creates the dye. Hareza toleda tzoivea. That is a offshoot. That's a derivative of dyeing. The chayiv, and one would be chayiv, a biblical violation on Shabbos. For example, here are some things. They might sound archaic, but you'll get the gist. Shenosan kankantoim l'toch me'avtza. If you put gallnut juice into vitriol until the whole mixture turns black, so you're producing dye. Or shenosan istis. Or let's say you put isatis into mekarkom, which is saffron water, and everything turns green. So basically the production of the dye itself is a tolda, and is also an Isser D'Oraisa. Okay, what is an Isser D'Rabbanan? The Rambam says one is not chayiv until he colors something and he dyes something in a permanent manner. However, if it is not permanent at all, for example, if let's say a woman puts red clay on her face, or vermilion on iron or metal, and you dye it, it's your pater. So unless it's permanent, now we're going to see permanent is going to be halachically rather unpermanent. As we're going to see, permanent means maybe it will only last for Shabbos. So if you color something with a temporary dye, you're pater. Sharei atama aviroi l'shatoi, because you're removing it for its time, ve'enoid sevea klum, and you're not dyeing at all. In other words, you could remove it immediately, and it doesn't color at all. So anything that's not permanent is only an Isser D'Rabbanan. As we mentioned, the Isser of tzvia was used in the Mishkan in the production of the curtains of the Mishkan. Now let's talk about probably the most common application of the malacha of tzvia, and that is the makeup. That's makeup. The Rambam, the Gemara says, "V'chein haya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer mishum Reb Elazar, isha le'taver srak al panam neishat tzivas." A woman is not to put rouge on her face because she's dying. Now, is that Isser D'Oraisa or Isser D'Rabbanan? For a woman to put the rouge on her face, is that D'Oraisa or is that D'Rabbanan? Says the Holy Rambam that Hatzoveya me'aves malachas, Soveya is an av malacha, lefikach asur leisha lahavir srak al paneh. Therefore, it is prohibited for a woman to put the rouge on her face. The Rambam doesn't say she's chayiv, the Rambam says asur. Apparently the Rambam holds that because this makeup is not permanent, it is not an Isser D'Oraisa, it's only an Isser D'Rabbanan. As the Rambam himself said, that any time you color, you're not chayiv until it's a tseva ha-miskayim. But if it's einoi miskayim, so then you are not chayiv. Okay, that's the sheet of the Rambam. Makeup, which is not permanent, is only Nisad Rabbanon, because it is einoi miskayim. Comes a Chayyadim, the Chayyadim has a Gavaldiga Kasha. The Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Ayin Hey Amud Aleph, going on to Ayin Hey Amud Beis, wants to know, what is the malach of shchita? Raise your hand if you're a shoichet, which would require you to come out of Zoom hiding. So I'm assuming that almost everyone on the shiur are shoichtim, since nobody's denying the fact. Okay, now that we established that definitively, that you guys are all shoichtim, is there an isser to do shchita on Shabbos? And the answer is yes. Why? Rav says you're dying. Shmuel says you're killing. So the Gemara asks, Rav says you're dying and you're not killing? So the Gemara says, Rav says you're dying and killing. You're coloring and you're killing. What exactly are you coloring? So Rav said, let me explain so that later generations don't come and laugh at me. When somebody shechs, he wants the neck area of the animal to be colored so that people know, come and they could buy meat. So the one who shechs is pleased that the base hashchita, the area of the neck, should be colored so that people know and they could buy meat. Now that coloring around the base hashchita, is that temporary or is that permanent? The Chayyim says that's clearly temporary. It's not going to remain dyed and colored forever. And even though it's temporary, Rav holds your chayiv. So why does the Rambam say that if somebody puts on makeup, you're not chayiv because the makeup is temporary? You don't need permanent. We see from Rav's opinion that when you shecht on Shabbos, you're chayiv for dyeing, that you don't need a permanent dye. It's enough to have a temporary dye. In other words, the Rambam does not seem to be consistent with Rav, to which the Chaye Adam says that's true, because the Rambam paskins like Shmuel, that you're not chayiv for dyeing the Beis Hashchita, because you're only chayiv if you dye and color something permanently, not if you color something temporarily. However, the Smag seems to hold that even if you dye something temporarily, you are chayiv. The Beis Yosef quotes the Smag. The Smag says that according to Rav, you're chayiv for shoichet, for dyeing. And we know that a woman also cannot dye her face because that is coloring. In all of these cases, you are chayiv because you want it. You want there to be a coloration. Ooh, that implies that the Smag is paskening like Shmuel. That the Smag is paskening like Rav, that you are chayiv for coloring even if it's not permanent. However, let's for all intents and purposes, let's say we pasken like Shmuel. Let's say we pasken like Shmuel, that you're only chayiv for dyeing if something is permanent. What is the definition of permanent? The Mishnah Berurah says permanent is if the dye lasts longer than Shabbos, then you're chayiv. Longer than Shabbos is considered permanent. The Minchas Chinuch holds that as long as dye lasts a significant amount of time, that's permanent. And therefore he wonders why you are not chayiv, why a woman is not chayiv for putting the rouge on her face. He doesn't agree with the Chayyim Adam that the reason why she's not chayiv midaraisa is because we paskin like Shmuel that it has to be permanent. That's called permanent. 36 hours is permanent. 3 days is permanent. Permanent doesn't mean a permanent marker that's never going to come out. Permanent means a nice amount of time. A couple of days is permanent. And therefore the Minchas Chinuch asks, why is a woman not chayiv for putting on makeup? Now again, she cannot put on makeup regardless. It would be an Isser D'Rabbanan. The question is it an Isser D'Oraisa? And the Chayyim Adam said it's not an Isser D'Oraisa because we paskin it has to be permanent. So the Minchas Chinuch asks, it is permanent. That's permanent. Something lasting for a couple of days is permanent. So these holy Hilchos Shabbos sheets, produced by Rabbi Brett and the Shimru team, bring an interesting chiddush of Rav Karp in Hilchos Shabbos b'Shabbos. And he says that the definition of permanent means that it cannot be removed without a trace of it remaining. However, rouge, you could take it off and there'll be no trace of it at all, that by very definition is not permanent. Something that could be removed without any trace, without any remnant, is by definition not permanent, and that is the reason why for a woman it would not be an Isser Da'iraisa to put on the rouge, it would only be an Isser D'Rabbanan. Now let's bring up the following subject. This is very interesting. The Beis Yosef quotes the Shibbolei Haleket regarding the following scenario, regarding saffron, karkoim. Do you have to worry that your karkoim may die, may get colored? I'll explain what I mean. There is a very important comment of the Sefer Yereim that he says it's not the derech to color food. And the Yereim says as follows. Raise your hand if you eat strawberries. Now I'll tell you a little halach about strawberries. Strawberries have problems with bugs. So in order to eat strawberries, you got to cut off the stem and soak them in soap water. You agitate them, and then they're pretty much good to go. You say you never heard that before? That's because you don't live in America. In America, we know these things about bugs. They're very into bugs in America. Maybe we just have more of them. Somebody has a shaila. I'm not good with the questions of someone's raising their hand, maybe? I don't know how to do that. So if you have a question, I guess just call it out, because I don't know how to take it. So you agitate your strawberries in this way, according to the Vad HaRabbanim here in New York, you'll be able to eat your strawberries. Fine. Now your hands are red. They're red like anything. Or blueberries. Don't take your strawberry or blueberried hands and wipe them on your nice white shirt. You see my nice white shirt? If I eat strawberries, I can't put on my shirt, nor can you, by the way. If you eat strawberries, don't put your hands on my shirt either. Now, because that will be dyeing, you're going to be coloring the item of clothing. However, and therefore if somebody's bleeding, don't wipe it off on your clothing. That's also dyeing. But if you have bread, and you want to color your bread strawberry colored, you have a kid, he's not going to eat anything. You tell him, you want strawberry bread? He says, what? Yeah, and you take a strawberry and you rub it on the bread. No problem. Because it's not the derech to color food. And so basically the Shibbolei Haleket and the Sefer Yereim say, Ein tzvia be'oichlin u'mashkem. And therefore the Shulchan Aruch Paskin, Siman Shin Chaf, to put saffron in a dish and we'll color it, it's not a problem. Ein tzvia be'oichlin. Mishnah Berurah says, could you pour red wine into white wine? Why? You want to make it look red. It's more appetizing. The red color of wine is a much more attractive color. It's a pasuk even in Mishlei, Al tireh yayin edoim biyayin. So you want to pour red wine into white wine, you could do it, even if you intend to color it. However, so that's the opinion of the Mishnah Berurah, and the Shulchan Aruch writes as well. Again, if your hands are dirty, are red or blue, don't wipe it on your shirt, but you're allowed to color food. However, the Ramah is even more mekel. The Ramah says the same way you could color food, you could color your white shirt. If you have strawberry-filled hands, you could wipe it on your shirt. You know why? That's not called dyeing, that's called dirtying. The Darchei Moshe says the chol zeh einoi derech lichluch, and it's not soiveya. How do we paskin? We paskin that you could rely on this opinion if there's no other eitzah. In other words, let's say you have you're on your way to shul and your hands are full of strawberries, and you don't know what to do because it's not going to be good. You're going to walk into shul with red hands. They're going to think I don't know what you did to your kids. It's not going to be good. So you want your hands to be clean. So what could you do? So don't wipe it on your shirt, but wipe it on the shirt of the guy sitting next to you, obviously. No, I'm just joking. By the way, I hope you get my dry humor. Some people take me very seriously, and that could be a problem. So only listen to my halacha, but if I have any jokes, don't use that halacha l'maisa. But let's say you ask your friend, would you mind if I wipe my strawberry hands on your shirt? And your friend is not going to mincha, ready to daven mincha earlier, and you have no paper towels. then if you have no other eitzah, it's not considered dyeing, it would be considered dirtying. However, there's another kula. What if, can I wipe my strawberry hands on a paper towel or a cloth? And the answer is that you for sure could do. Because that dyeing only applies to material that would usually be dyed, like clothing. But most people don't spend their time dyeing paper towels. And if you do, then you could see me privately and we could try to work out that issue that you have. But most people do not dye paper towels, and therefore it would be permitted to wipe your strawberry or blueberried hands on the paper towel. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the main application today, and that is sunbathing on Shabbos. Basically, you've been hiding out in the winter in your house because of the COVID, you have no color, and you want to take in some sun. Obviously, you're going to spend the time learning. Whatever you learn, I could recommend. Have a lot of good things to learn on Shabbos. You want to sunbathe on Shabbos. Or we're going to discuss photochromic glasses. What are photochromic glasses? So here on the sheets, they give us a very nice scientific explanation for how to skin tan. So I'm going to tell you my oversimplified explanation, then we can read inside. Basically, you have things in your sun that help you block out the sun and the ultraviolet rays, and they become dark to help you block your sun, protect your sun, to protect your skin. Excuse me. So, but here in the Holy Shimru booklet, it says melanin is a natural pigment produced by cells called melanocytes in a process called melanogenesis. Melanocytes produce two types of melanin, phenylalanine and eumelanin, which are either red or very dark brown. Melanin protects the body by absorbing ultraviolet radiation. Excessive UV radiation causes sunburn along with other direct and indirect DNA damage to the skin. And the body naturally combats and seeks to repair the damage and protect the skin by creating and releasing further melanin in the skin cells. Okay, with the production of melanin, the skin darkens. The same thing with photochromic lenses. Basically, there's some kind of molecules in the lens that when the sun comes out, they become sunglasses, and when you're indoors, they're clear. So the question in both of these cases, is this dyeing? Is this going to be like dyeing the curtains of the Mishkan? I'm dyeing the curtains of the Mishkan. I'm lying outside. I'm a Caucasian individual, and then after an hour, I look like I come from a country closer to the equator. Am I allowed to do that? I'm coloring my skin. The same thing with photochromic lenses. Is that considered coloring the lens? Now, this shaila hinges on the following issue. Number one, for something to be dyeing, do you need to use an external source of color? A color, do you need to use something which is a coloring agent? A dye, a strawberry, something that has color to it. In this case, there is no external coloring agent. You're not putting a coloring agent into the item you're coloring. Also, are you really coloring the item in the case of sunbathing or the photochromic lens? And even more important, are you even doing anything? So, the Reb Falk in the Machazei Eliyahu, he writes as follows: Ibra, d'lo yizbar behedya b'mlachas soivea, im gam b'li nesina sev al hadavar hanitzba. I'm not completely sure regarding the malach of dyeing, whether even without adding dye to the dyed item, or just a chemical process, basically, you're triggering a chemical process and the item becomes colored, is this included in the malach of dyeing? The Mishnah Berurah says, let's say you're not using black shoe polish. Let's say you're just putting oil on the shoes, and the oil, by putting oil on the shoes, it will blacken the shoe, it will bring out its natural black color. Mishnah Berurah says you can't do that. So Rav Shlomo Zalman says, from this Mishnah Berurah we see, the Mishnah Berurah, by the way, is in Shimon Chav Zayin Siv Cutting and Beis, that is somebody allowed to use clear nail polish or clear lipstick on Shabbos? On the one hand, you're not coloring anything. What are you coloring exactly? It's clear lipstick, it's clear nail polish. The Rav Shlomo Zalman says you can't do it because even though you're not adding new color, you're enhancing the already natural color. And the Rav Shlomo Zalman says that you also, brings another proof that even if no color is applied, but if you enhance the latent color, it's an issue. What about the following case? Can a woman pinch her cheeks or put dough on her cheeks and then pull it off? Or put cement or plaster on her cheeks and rip it off? She's going to have a nice ruddy color. Is she allowed to do it? The Shulchan Aruch says she's not allowed to do it. Why is this considered dyeing? Is it because it changes the color of an item? And in that case, maybe you can't sunbathe, or maybe you can't use the photochromic lens? Or is it the dough is enhancing the existing color? And in that case, to sunbathe, maybe that would be permitted. The bottom line is, Rav Shlomo Zalman says you could wear photochromic lenses. He says, you know why you could wear photochromic lenses? Because it's no different than sunbathing. And just like you could sunbathe, you could wear photochromic lens. And the argument of Rav Shlomo Zalman is, he says, Ein bezeh mishum isur tzviyah. There's no prohibition of dyeing. The guy's not doing anything. What's he doing? He's walking in the street. He's sitting outside. It's like a guy who sits out in the sun for an hour and he's sunbathing. What's the guy doing? He's not So Rav Shlomo Zalman seems to say that the reason why you're allowed to sunbathe, it's not because you're not providing external color, or it's not because the item itself is not being colored, it's because you're not doing anything. By the way, he says another reason. As soon as you go back indoors, very soon the color dissipates. So that's not permanent. It's quite temporary. So Rav Shlomo Zalman seems to hold that for something to be considered dyeing, you don't need an external colorant. But in this case, sitting or walking in the sun is not actively doing a malacha, and therefore it's mutter. And the same would go for coloring the glasses. There's no permanency. You're not doing anything. It is permitted. The Archa Shabbos has a different take on this. And the Archa Shabbos says that the reason why you could either sunbathe or use photochromic lenses is because nothing is really changing. Certain substances have one color in some locations and a different color in other locations. People are lighter in the shade and darker in the sun. So going in the sun is not coloring. It's like oimid lekach. This is the person's already natural color when he sits in the sun. This is the person's natural color when he sits in the shade. So when you go from one location to the next, you're not coloring. This is how God created a person. That a person reflects color A in location A and color B in location B. But there are poskim, namely the Divrei Meshulam, says there's no Isser in sunbathing because it's not considered coloring unless you use an actual coloring agent. Rav Moshe's psak is it is mutter to use photochromic lenses and it is mutter to sunbathe, as well as Rav Shlomo Zalman. By the way, the Minchas Yitzchak does take issue with the sunbathing, but most poskim, including Rav Moshe and Rav Shlomo Zalman, allow it. And toiv lo einayim lirois es hashemesh. It is good for the eyes to see the sun. Rav Miller would say that when you walk outside, you should say toivim ma'oros shabara elakeinu. Say why are they good? The sun is very good. First of all, the sun produces vitamins that are essential for energy, and the sun kills bacteria on your skin. So, obviously, if you're going to be sitting outside, you're going to be using your time properly, but one would be able to, lahalacha, according to normative halacha, it would be permitted to suntan on Shabbos, And with that, I'm going to wish everyone farewell. If I could take the opportunity, if anybody wants to join our special Lag BaOmer live stream bonfire Shiur tonight at 8 o'clock, you're welcome to do that. Unless you live in one of those countries where it's already Shabbos for you, so then don't do that. And then, by the way, tonight there's a special Words of Inspiration at the Hatzovo that will be about 11:25 p.m. if you're still up. Okay, thanks everyone for listening and joining.
Just quickly
summarize
dying min Torah, because you made a distinction between min Rabbanim.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Can you just summarize what constitutes dying min Torah? Because you made a distinction from the Rabbanim that it's only if it's permanent, you said.
Yeah, right, thank you. So, something which is permanent, which is basically lasts for a little bit more than Shabbos, would be the Iraisa. But for example, sometimes kids have like fake ink. They throw ink on your shirt and then it basically dissipates after a minute. That would not be dyeing the Iraisa. That would be only midrabanan. So anything which is not permanent. What is the definition of permanent? The Mishnah Berurah says if it lasts a little bit longer than Shabbos, that is permanent. And that would be the Iraisa. The Rabbana would be if it's not permanent. Okay, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for joining. Bracha v'hatzlacha. Kol tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.